From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. In Colombia, Rodrigo Londoño, political candidate and former leader of guerrilla group FARC, warned the peace process is in grave danger. Londoño, who is popularly known as Timochenko, said he is launching an SOS to save the dialogue. He asked for all parties to unite efforts to get the peace process back on track.
We need a government that guarantees the implementation of the agreements for reconciliation, so the Colombian people can build peace in Colombia. That is the challenge that all Colombians have, and each one will decide it with their vote. I want to launch an SOS for the peace process and its implementation. We know well that when you unite the smallest forces, small but powerful, who are trying to sabotage this beautiful and historic peace process, we can be an example for everyone, for the world.
Londoño also said he will continue his presidential campaign. He denied reports that he would suspend his campaign and support left-wing presidential candidate Gustavo Petro. Petro is ahead in opinion polls, while Londoño is in last place. U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration are considering new sanctions on Venezuela. The sanctions targeting the country's vital oil sector are aimed at putting pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro ahead of April 22nd elections. Reports say the U.S. may sanction a military-run oil firm, and it may restrict insurance coverage for Venezuelan oil shipments. In the meantime, to counteract the sanctions, Maduro announced a pension fund expansion and the delivery of more socialist cards to assist in the delivery of aid to the population. Potential presidential candidates in Venezuela have to register by Thursday. If they want to run in the election. Registration was meant to close on the 26th. However, it was extended by 2 days because President Maduro wanted to give the opposition a fair chance to run. So far, 6 people, including President Maduro, have registered. Friday will mark the start of the campaign season that will last until April 19th. Voters go to the polls on April 22nd. A former Odebrecht executive says the company gave kickbacks to Peruvian President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. The executive told state prosecutors that the money was given to Kuczynski during the 2011 presidential election campaign in order to gain construction contracts. The president denied the charges last December. The Peru Congress debated Kuczynski's impeachment on suspicion he received $800,000 in Odebrecht bribes. As President Kuczynski has immunity from prosecution, he could only formally be investigated when he leaves office in 2021. In Ecuador, the National Assembly elected the transitory members of the Citizen Participation Council. The council, made up of 6 men and 1 woman, will be in charge of appointing state agency officials. They will be responsible for choosing the state attorney, superintendents, the ombudsman, and electoral and judicial authorities. The makeup of the council has raised criticism because it ignores the long-standing tradition of gender party implemented by Rafael Correa's previous government. The U.S. is working with Guatemala to step up anti-narcotic operations. Washington's ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, met with President Jimmy Morales on Wednesday. She praised Morales for his effort to tackle crime and corruption, despite the fact that he's mired in a scandal about illegal campaign financing.
Really on how we can better partner together, especially when it comes to counter-narcotics and dealing with gangs. We also talked with the President about anti-corruption methods and methods that he was doing. We encouraged him on the things he's already accomplished, and we encouraged him to continue down the path of really making sure that he was earning the trust and transparency of the people of Guatemala.
Haley also thanked Morales for his support of U.S. policy. Guatemala is one of the few countries that backed the U.S. decision to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The country is also a beneficiary of U.S. aid. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on. Welcome back. In El Salvador, a report on financial contributions for political parties has stirred controversy. The latest findings have skeptics wondering whether policies are driven by people or by money.
The Salvadorian people have been granted access to a report that details who the primary financiers of the political parties were between 2006 and 2017.
El 64% of the contributions have gone to the Arena Party, 18% to the FMLN, and 8% to the next party, then 5, 3, and 1% for smaller parties. This raises a discussion as to who or what decides, the sovereign, the citizen, or does the money decide?
The report of more than 35,000 records reveals financiers of the Arena Party include 2 universities, which have carried out opinion surveys for the upcoming elections. The results of their studies greatly favor Arena, which has prompted criticism they may have been biased.
We have to understand that a university is supposed to generate varied currents of thought. So when it becomes a financer of a party, and produces studies in favor of the party, it generates certain suspicion.
Social organizations are also insisting the Arena return $10 million donated by Taiwan for the victims of the earthquakes in 2001. These funds were deposited in the accounts of the Rodriguez Sport Foundation, a main financier of the right-wing party.
We have always said that the Arena Party is the party of the country's oligarchical sectors, of the great business elites, which is actually the real power in El Salvador, and that the Arena Party is no more than a political instrument for access to the formal power of the state.
The report, presented by the Secretariat of Citizen Participation and Transparency of the Presidency, estimates that 92% of donors of the Arena Party are companies, associations, and foundations, while the FMLN have people as their greatest contributors with 91%.
And the Caribbean heads of states are weighing in on the situation in Venezuela as the nation prepares to go to the polls. Venezuela has long had a strong relationship with Caribbean nations. However, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonzalez, reiterated they will not get involved in Venezuela's domestic policies.
In relation to CARICOM's position on Venezuela, that position is well established at several meetings of CARICOM, and the principles which have been enunciated in relation to non-intervention and non-interference, and at the same time strengthening and supporting the principles of representative democracy and freedom.
And Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, says his country has responded to the increased migration of Venezuelans to its shores by trying to improve trade with its neighbor. Speaking at CARICOM's closing press conference, Prime Minister Rowley said the majority of the 30,000 to 35,000 Venezuelans in the country are there pursuing job opportunities and trade.
Those persons who have come to Trinidad looking for opportunities remain within the conditions of our Immigration Act. The most important problem for this increase in personnel and traffic has been the movement of persons who may engage in criminal conduct involving the trade in firearms and ammunition, and the persons for human trafficking.
Around 200 citizens from Trinidad and Tobago have migrated to Syria to join the Islamic State group. When asked about the issue at the closing CARICOM press conference on Wednesday, Prime Minister Keith Rowley said the country is taking steps to adjust its security responses as a result.
Trinidad and Tobago has had to step up our security and information gathering about persons who subscribe to or sympathize with the doctrine of ISIS and who may be citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And from time to time, we have had to detain persons for investigation as part of our security responses to any threat that may be posed from such persons.
The UN Deputy High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has urged Central American governments to keep their borders open and to take responsibility for the effects of migration. Our correspondent, Hilda Silvestrucci, has more. During her visit to Central America, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has called on 6 Central American nations to take proper measures to face forced migration, such as keeping their borders open. In Honduras, the Human Rights Commissioner said that in 2017, more than 300,000 people migrated to other countries, fleeing from gang violence. Honduras and El Salvador are 2 countries with the highest migration rate in the region, since most of the public institutions haven't taken any action against violence. Venezuela has long been a refugee for Colombians fleeing the long-running civil conflict back home. Freddie Gillingham takes a look at what life has been like for them in their adopted homeland.
Lourdes Cervantes was 24 years old when she arrived in Venezuela. She's now a Venezuelan citizen. She and her family have made a new life in the hills surrounding the capital.
Here I have a new future with my entire family. I can give to them what I couldn't give to them there.
More than 5 million Colombians are believed to be living in Venezuela, benefiting from local social services.
We have received help from the government. Nobody has discriminated me because I'm a Colombian. I received housing and food help.
Aid groups say Colombia's 5-decade-long civil conflict has caused the most prolonged humanitarian crisis in the Americas. International media have been focused on Venezuelans crossing the border into Colombia. Earlier this month, Colombia's President, Juan Manuel Santos, tightened migration controls along the country's border with Venezuela, in what some in Caracas called an act of aggression. Colombian refugees know all too well what it's like to start from scratch. But with the right support in their adopted country, hope can always be restored. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Mexican police officers have admitted to selling 3 visiting Italians to a Jalisco criminal gang for $50. The 4 police officers have not been identified, but they are believed to be 3 males and 1 female. They are now facing criminal charges. The trio from Naples was reported missing on January 31st after arriving in Jalisco on business. A spokesman for their families called on the criminal gangs to release them or reveal where they are. Violence in Mexico remains in the forefront of the minds of the residents, from the missing people known as the disappeared to the assassination of public officials and those who wish to occupy public office. Violence has increased exponentially over the last 3 months.
Family members of the disappeared make repeated visits to the Executive Commission of Attention for Victims, demanding support in the search for their loved ones and asking for protection against the general violence affecting Mexico.
The bodies that have been found from 2014 until now were only found thanks to the relatives who went and climbed the hills to find them. Were it not for them, they would never have gone to look. They would have called off the searches. They were supposed to begin the searches again in 2017, but here we are once again in 2018. Not even the prosecutor's office goes.
Some come from the northern state of Tamaulipas, others from Guerrero in the south. But everyone agrees that living in any part of the country is increasingly difficult.
They do a curfew at 8 o'clock at night. We have to be in our houses. Right now, I'm in a search group. I'm looking in the fields. We've found bodies. None of them have been my son.
Organized crime, they say, doesn't respect anyone, even reaching those linked to politics and local governments.
We are observing the beginning. It's very worrying for me. A trajectory of violence in which political and government ambitions are closely linked to the presence of organized crime as a form of government.
Since the official launch of the electoral process in September 2017, 31 public officials and pre-candidates of different political parties have been killed.
In the end, or what this could provoke, is the vote based on fear. If there is a vote based on fear, then there will be abstention. And if there's abstention, it benefits those who have a hard vote. And in this case, it's the PRI. In electoral political logic, this is how it works.
So far in 2018, cases include that of Adolfo Serna, who aspired to be mayor of Atoyac in Guerrero, and Francisco Rojas, who wanted to govern the municipality of Cuautitlan. Cuautitlan in the state of Mexico, and Dulce Rebeja, who was 28 years old, who ran as deputy in the Guerrero locality of Chilapa.
In Argentina, the start of the school year may not happen as planned. Teachers' unions have announced a general strike for next week. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
2018 is set to be another tough year for teachers and the education system in general. Since the arrival of Mauricio Macri's government, negotiations between officials and teacher unions have failed to reach an agreement. Wednesday marks the start of a new school year in Buenos Aires, and teachers have gone on general strike. Next week, classes will start in the rest of the country, and further demonstrations are expected. Among their demands, protesters are calling for a significant raise in the minimum wage. Meanwhile, the government has offered a 9% increase in salaries, while inflation during 2018 is expected to exceed 20%. Teachers are still hoping for dialogue regarding the cost of living in the country. On Thursday, teachers' unions will hold a national meeting to confirm next week's strikes. It is also expected that they will join women's strike planned for March 8th to demand fairer treatment and a decent education for women and girls.
Thank you, Edgardo, for that report. In Panama, citizens are criticizing the government for low investments in areas such as health, education, and agronomy.
The budget for the health ministry remains low according to popular opinion. This is leading to shortcomings for those who depend on public health.
These circumstances demand a rise in resources provided by the government, yet they seek to lower the health budget, which will exacerbate the issue.
The national budget for 2018 stands at $24 billion, an increase of 7.9% from the previous year. Nevertheless, areas such as education receive a budget of $2.5 billion. of which only 94 million are destined for investment and operations, while the rest goes towards payment of wages. Other areas, like health, receive $2.2 billion, out of which only 600,000 are destined for investments. Similar to the agriculture sector, which received $132 million, and only 79 million are meant for investments.
Health, education, and culture are well being weakened. These sectors are meant to help a country grow. We're moving backwards. We have laws that are being proposed which will only benefit the few. And what little the masses have, it's being stolen.
Lack of funds have caused areas like agriculture to fall into ruin, which in turn leads to a dependence on imports. This in a country which owns an interoceanic canal that contributes over $1 billion annually to the economy.
What's happening is that rent being accrued by the government, thanks to the canal, is being used so the rich don't have to pay taxes, instead of using that money for social development in areas like education, health, security, or food sovereignty.
The problem doesn't lie in the amount of resources generated by the canal, but in the investment priorities which do not benefit the majority.
Two big Chinese bike-sharing companies are making inroads into Mexico. They will soon start their operation in the Mexico City and later to other Latin American cities. Beijing-based Mobike and Ofo will be competing with Mexican government's bike-sharing venture Ecobici, which was launched in 2010. Mexico City is one of the most congested cities in the world, so it offers huge opportunities for these companies. More people are also becoming more environmentally friendly and switching to bikes for their daily mobility.
We are hoping to be the intermobility option with other forms of public transport that can help you get your destination in the fastest way possible, in the most convenient and ecological way.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
But you are fighting for everyone who believes in the proposition that public education is foundational to this country and foundational to our future.
Yes, yes, yes.
Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin has outlined his plans to tackle poverty and improve infrastructure. In his annual State of the Nation address, Putin said he wants to cut the poverty rate by half over the next 6 years. Infrastructure spending will also be doubled to around $190 billion, and he plans on improving the education system and modernizing Russian defense technology. The massive spending plans comes ahead of the March 16th presidential election. Putin is widely expected to be re-elected.
We must solve one of the key tasks for the next decade, to ensure a confident long-term growth of citizens' real income. We should at least halve the poverty rate in the next 6 years.
Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
U.S. President Donald Trump's close aide and White House Communications Director Hope Hicks has announced her resignation. Her departure comes as a surprise for many, as she was the longest-serving communication advisor to Trump. 29-year-old Hicks has been working with Trump since his election campaign days. The reason for her resignation is not known. 50 national lawmakers in France spent the night on the streets of Paris on Wednesday. They were highlighting the suffering of homeless people. There are almost 3,000 people who live on the streets of Paris. France has been grappling with extremely cold weather in the last few days. This year, at least 18 homeless people in Paris died due to cold weather. Last year, 500 people died all over France.
Distress and poverty exist all year long, not only during winter. Today, it's true we cannot ignore the weather factor. People shouldn't stay outside in this weather.
Hundreds of South Koreans marked Independence Day by protesting against Japan. They especially highlighted the issue of comfort women who were forced to work in Japanese brothels during the wartime. People also praised the resistance to Japanese military occupation and those who died fighting for the country's independence.
Artists in Poland have created the world's first feature-length animated film made entirely through hand-painted frames. The film Loving Vincent required 125 artists from around the globe to paint 65,000 frames, which brings Vincent van Gogh's art style to life. Working in a massive studio in the city of Gdańsk, they based their oil paintings on scenes initially shot on film with actors. The film has been nominated for the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature. And we've come to the end of this morning's news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.